screen, like 2/3 of the screen is me in my kitchen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right, I think we're going out 1/3 each. I'm going to look
Let's have a look at you two.
This is theoretically we might be live at this stage. So let me just.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Let me get rid of my email first because that's making.
Oh yeah, Mike's doing that as well. Hold on a second. I need to do that. This is so professional, isn't it? That'll be good.
Well, that's all right. They can see now. People see the real us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, theoretically, this is going out, but I'm just trying to refresh my page and see whether I can actually find us. Oh, interesting. Oh, hello, everybody. Anyway, if we are going live.
Yes, if we are live. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Just to be really professional, I'm going to now look at this. This is amazing, this bit. Where does it go?
So good. I'd say, oh, look at that.
Oh, that's exciting.
Isn't it?
That's
very exciting. This stuff.
I still can't see you guys, but that's exciting. I think I can't read that.
I think people can see you, so I think you're safe.
That's fine then. That's good.
Is it working? Oh, I don't know. It must be.
How will we know if someone is out there?
It says we've been broadcasting for 1 minute 20.
Oh, that's exciting then.
And
some Sarah Reed has said no. Is that her? Is that somebody?
Sarah, yeah, Sarah's. Sarah's. I don't know how you replied to it. Hello, Sarah.
I'm going to say hello, Sarah. Oh, she's typing it, and then we respond. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah.
Oh, you can see all three of us. Brilliant.
Right, that's really useful. No, we can't.
Anyway, as long as they can, that's okay, isn't it?
I thought, because we're all at
home.
Oh, Andrew, hello.
Oh.
Technology. Hi, Andrew.
Andrew's a very old friend of mine from a magazine called Select, and he's a very, very clever editor. And he runs a very good podcast called Big Mouth, which you all ought to be on. But anyway, the idea is we're all stuck at home these days. I presume we're all stuck at home and not getting out.
Feeling very stuck, yeah.
Hi, Stuart.
I really miss, what's all this then? And doing events and the like. So I thought I'd try and set some up in my living room. And this is it. Because the last event I actually did was with Graham. And it was quite a weird one. Can you tell us what it was, Graham?
We were brilliant actors, weren't we? We were fabulous. We did a murder mystery, and we had more ham than Dewhurst. So I suppose they haven't got much ham at the moment. But we were. So I was a toff. You were a leader of the council, and we had 80 people taking part in a murder mystery. We had Ellie Griffiths there and Colette Macbeth, and we had a lovely cream tea. It was a murder mystery cream tea in Hassocks. 80 people, selling bookshops come along and sold loads of books, and we had a laugh. But that was about 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? And since
it now feels like about a year ago, doesn't it? Already.
Yeah.
I think you guys must have been one of the last to get out there and do an event.
I think it is
much longer than that since I've been out and about.
Have you ever done a murder mystery thing, Sarah?
I have only. No, I haven't. I've only hosted the tables at Harrogate.
It was to be honest, I was quite apprehensive about doing it. Graham wrote it, so I've got to be work out how
I shouldn't ask if you were the murderer.
Well, we can change it every time. It's
of course you can. That's true.
I better scroll down and find who else. So, because I thought it might be a bit cringy, but actually it works really well because all the tables had to talk. So all these people who didn't know each other actually had to work collectively, and I thought it was really brilliant. I think that might be, part why we sold a lot of books. They were sort of embarrassing each other into buying books at the end of it.
We did shame them. We told them that was the next panic buying craze, didn't we? That it was all our books, so they didn't get them now. They might be able to get them again.
And then when the world runs out of toilet paper, they'll know what to do.
Absolutely.
I have to say, Andrew's comments here are excellent. I think Andrew should be part of this chat. He came to see what your office looks like, William.
This is,
and I can't see it.
I wouldn't dare show you my office. This is quite tasteful. This is my living room.
Oh, I can only see my own kitchen, which I've seen before. So
he also knows several people that live near me who are probably murderers.
Yeah, so that's reassuring, isn't it?
Oh, we've got Sven from Germany. Hello, Sven.
Hello, Sven. I think actually it's okay though in Hassocks because presumably all the murderers are self-isolating. So
they are self-isolating, yeah. So they're just killing each other and their families. We'll find them in about October time. We'll find them all, and that'll be fine.
I admire your optimism.
Sarah, you were also one of the last people to leave the country and get back. You were in Japan.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I was in Japan for the whole of January, and the last week that we were there, we witnessed an amount of sort of panic buying of face masks. We saw people queuing up outside the drugstores as the deliveries came in, and they were bulk buying lots of face masks, and we were sort of, going on the buses and walking around and just thinking, this is slightly crazy. And the thing is, we did both get really nasty coughs and colds when we were over there. So we got back, and there was no advice at that point to do anything. It was a week before the advice really tightened, and it was only if you'd been to Wuhan in China that you had a fever. And we didn't have fevers, we just had coughs and colds. But then a week later, they sort of said, actually, no, guys, you have been, you have got these symptoms and you should self-isolate. So it was really great. So we'd basically done a lot of stuff in the first week we got back. I'd been to Aberdeen. There's a lot of crime. A lot of the crime writing fraternity might well have toppled had I not been. Had I had what they feared I had. But luckily, so it was a bit ridiculous self-isolating after I'd been all over the place since we got back. But there's nothing like being told you can't leave your house to make you really want to leave your house. You notice that? It's weird, isn't it? Even though as writers, we probably quite like to be in our houses, but being told you've got to do it. Yeah. It just sits badly with me.
Because we're not, I'm not self-isolating, but I'm so social distancing.
Yes.
So I can, like today I took the dog out for a walk and, nipped down and looked at some empty shelves on the shop. But what does it actually feel like then when you're self-isolating, when you have got that obligation to just literally cut yourself off?
Well, it felt weird, oddly enough, it felt weirder then because there wasn't any proper advice. And it was, we were so absolutely certain that there was nothing wrong with us. Because although now we'd probably have been seriously worried because we both had these sort of barking coughs and really horrible sort of chest colds. It didn't come out, of your nose like it normally does. And so now I'd probably be really worried. But then there was none of these sort of, social distancing guidelines. There was none of the wiping down of the surfaces or any of that stuff, which although incredibly draconian and quite frightening in itself, I find oddly reassuring because at least you know what the rules are now, or you do to an extent. I'm lucky in that I have two close relatives who are quite high up in medicine and the military, and they sent me a really useful set of lists that was quite frightening in one sense, but on the other hand, you felt like you at least knew what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So it's easier now in a way. I feel like at least now I'm prepared to do it properly. Ask me again in 2 weeks' time, and I'll probably be crawling the walls. But at the moment, I feel at least there's a structure to it now. Whereas before, I just felt like I'd been told to stay indoors when there was nothing really wrong with me.
Do you feel we're in one of the few jobs where actually this is, we're quite prepared for it in a weird way. We spend a lot of time self-isolating already. And actually, most of us are complaining we don't get enough time to stick at home. I mean, is there an upside?
What do you think, Graham?
Well, I think there is, and I say that purely because I've got to the end of the month to edit my novel, and I was hopelessly behind, and now I'm getting closer on track. So I think we are more used to it. I think we are. We can continue to work. I know a lot of people that will have to go out for work. My son has just joined the police, and he's being trained at breakneck speed, and I think they're going to have them deployed within about a month.
Right?
Yeah. I really do. I think he's saying they're bringing forward all the staff safety training and all of the powers, so they can go out and at least kind of man a barricade or whatever. My daughter's a nurse, and she doesn't know when she's going to be around or when she's not.
Yeah.
So, but we've got the we've got the privilege, I suppose, of being used to working on our own behind a computer screen, and so other than the social aspect, I think we can probably adapt fairly well.
I think the downside to it is I think Erin Kelly pointed this out somewhere is our imaginations. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm already sort of, I'd love to be able to write the end to all of this, the resolution that we're all aiming towards. But in the meantime, I'm just writing the next chapters in my head, and it's not. I don't find it conducive to creating new things. But I'm going to have a good go, because I actually had an idea sometime before it became quite as tense as it is now, and obviously it's going to get tenser, I think, before it gets less tense. I did start outlining the next thing that I'm going to work on. So I'm hoping that I can actually use this time to do that. At the moment, I've been just sort of making notes, and I find it really hard to concentrate at the moment, to focus on stuff.
Yeah, I have to say, one of the worries I have, I'm setting something in the present, and you kind of think, what is the present? Yeah. I'm not sure I know anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what is the world in which you're writing into? How much should I be mentioning the virus in my books? Is this going to affect how people behave in 2021 when my book comes out? I don't know. It's quite a strange one, isn't it? We're used to being quite sure about how we engage in the world. I mean, part of the reason I know Graham is because Graham obviously used to be a very senior policeman in Brighton, and he's the sort of person you go up and say, Graham, I've written this bit about a police officer. Is it vaguely right? And Graham generally holds his head in his hands and tells you how to correct it.
We always find a way around it, though, don't we? There's always a way. There's always a way.
There is always a way. There is always. But it's interesting, because I always thought we write about, that's what we do. One of the things, and certainly one of the genius things about Sarah Hilary's books is their books set in a very real world. I'm just going to show the last one here. Look at this.
Oh, that was exciting. It went to 4. I can see you guys now.
Can you?
That's William.
You're actually covered up by caption.
You're covered up by the captions, Sarah, but at least you're here.
This suits me, because I'm covered by the caption and I can see you guys.
I'm going to get rid of
that. Must be how it works.
But no, I mean, one of the things that you've always written about is they're very realist, your books, and you have that kind of real layer. It's just quite interesting, isn't it? When the reality is sort of changing gear quite quickly, how you keep abreast of that.
I don't know. It's going to be, because I don't think, I mean, already the world is different day by day, isn't it, to anything that we're familiar with. So I think it is going to be really difficult to try and write something that's rooted in reality. But on the other hand, I think all our books and all the best crime writing generally is about emotional truths, isn't it, rather than reality truths, if that makes sense. So I think, and I'm actually in some ways not excited, because that makes me sound like some awful ghoul, but quite excited to write about the psychology of what's happening to us all at the moment. How it's manifesting itself. Who's behaving better under the stress and who's behaving worse. And it was really interesting to me, the tipping point at the beginning of this week, when clearly we'd reached that point where the human beings can only hold so much fear and panic and stress in their bodies at any time. And then there was this tipping point at the beginning of the week where suddenly all the headlines became, or tried to become, positive ones. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it was, and instead of the fear mongering, it was suddenly these almost wildly optimistic sort of positive things. But that was really interesting. Just the fact that obviously we couldn't cope with any more of that stuff. And so now we're trying to find positive things. We're trying to find the silver lining again. And so it'll be interesting to sort of map if you like, the nation's emotional arc as this thing, works its way out. So I think those truths won't ever change, but it'll be very difficult to write about specifically about, this period of time, I think, without it, but apart from anything else, without it feeling like a science fiction movie or a Cold War movie, a sort of Chernobyl,
I'm going to hear Graham talk about actually he might be doing his book. Who's got something on here?
Your voice is. I'm losing you, William.
What's going on there? Anyway, you're actually writing a fiction book then, Graham, which is a long time in the making. Like, you've been helping.
I remember telling you about the idea outside a pub in Brighton.
It was about 5 years ago, Graham.
It was 5 years ago. Not quite 5 years ago. It was.
Or in a big book.
And I have brought out 2 books since then, non-fiction. No, I haven't been sitting on my hands, but it's and it is interesting because it is set in the it was set in the medium future. It's now set in the very near future because it's taken me so long to write it. But and it's all about how policing, if policing gets cut to such a level that state-sponsored vigilantism takes over, and how the two collide, basically.
Wow.
But then I might have to introduce another element. And I think, you know, the behaviours that we're seeing over the last couple of weeks have really shown how well, all sides of human nature.
Yeah.
You know, I've not met anybody that has said I've been panic buying, but clearly loads of people have been panic buying. But I've met several people that have, you know, particularly people that work in the NHS, they're absolutely on their knees because they're determined to get. I mean, we're not at the peak of this yet, but they're determined to get everything ready for when we are. And I think, you know, in terms of our writing, there's some real extremes of human nature there coming out, and you know, probably within people 2 or 3 weeks ago that we just kind of thought were on, you know, on the level, you know, quite normal people, but we've got some people that are behaving appallingly and others that are heroes, basically.
What's it like from you? Presumably you're still talking to, I mean, it's been a few years since you've been out of the force, but you're presumably talking to your old colleagues. How are they feeling? Because there's going to be a lot falling on them as well over the next few weeks, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the police role will be around, you know, keeping the peace, ensuring that the vulnerable are properly served and protected. I mean, one of the things that they're thinking about at the moment is how people might exploit the vulnerable and elderly, by you know, purporting to be good neighbours, you know, offering new services that might, you know, help people get shopping in and being able to sort of run their lives and basically financially fleecing them, as you know. So they'll be thinking of that. They'll be thinking about what happens if there's civil unrest. But all of this is in the preparation. It's, you know, it's not happening yet that we know of. But you know, the skill of policing in the military in these kind of events, these scenarios, are to kind of scenario plan and to get contingencies in place so that they're able to deploy and respond appropriately if and when it happens. But, you know, predominantly trying to prevent them happening in the first place. But they'll be incredibly frustrated with what's going on, you know, in and around the supermarkets, and also the misinformation that's coming out.
Right.
That doesn't help at all.
Yeah, I mean, are you kind of glad you're out of the job when it comes to something like this? Because it must be.
I'd absolutely love to be doing this. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to be back out. You know, my son's just joined, so he's terrified that they're going to recall retired officers because he might find himself
working with.
Oh my God!
You might be.
If they never put me in a police cell, that would just be carnage. But
that's a new detective series. That's the new police series right there, Graham.
I know.
Yeah, father and son.
My other son said, if that happened, he said, you just would not be talking by the time you got home. You'd say, because I'd be telling him how it should be done. He'd be telling no, that's actually in the Stone Age, and we do it this way now. And he's only been in a week. But he's yeah. So I would love to be. You know, this is the sort of thing. I remember I retired just before all the fracking protests, and I was when I was my last few years in the police, I was public order commander, so I would have been in charge of the policing of that. And because I'd literally been out for a few months, and I wished I didn't miss the police at all. But I miss policing. You know, I didn't miss all the politics, but the actual policing side of it I did miss. So I'd love to be involved in this now, but I don't think they'll have me back. I think I'm too long in the tooth now.
Hey, just have to do that.
Never Andy.
Oh, very good. Sorry about that. That made it look like I wasn't listening to you at all.
No.
And what I'm going to also do now is actually show your most recent book, because this is out very recently and doing very well, which is again a book about something. You know, this is another of your non-fiction books.
It is, yeah.
And it's something that happened around Brighton, and you were sort of involved in it, obviously, as an officer, not from the very start of it, but, you know, any officer serving in Brighton was involved in this case. Can you just tell us a little bit about the book and how you came to write it? Yeah, so this
tells the story of two little girls who were snatched from close to their home back in 1986, taken to a wood on the side of a park, literally just over the road, sexually assaulted and murdered. And the offender, the killer, Russell Bishop, was prosecuted and was acquitted. And then 2 years later, after his acquittal, he did the same thing to another little girl
I have to admit, I've not looked at my ebook sales recently.
Right.
But your books, is this out? This been out quite recently, Graham?
Yeah, it came out on the 20th of February.
Yeah. So
it's not just on Amazon. So the ebooks were sitting below the paperbacks for a while, and then suddenly they've shot up.
Yeah,
I've heard that ebook sales are going up.
Yeah.
But likewise, tomorrow I'm going to be speaking to somebody from Linden Books, which is a small independent in Lincoln.
Yeah.
Actually, it'll be quite interesting to talk to booksellers.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Find out what the experience from them is about this. And I think that independent bookshops are doing quite well because they've got dedicated customers, and quite often they're taking. I know City Books in Hove is actually literally taking books to customers now.
Yeah. Warwick Books have been doing. They're baking cherry cakes, I think, or cakes of some kind. And Warwick Books.
Right.
A lovely couple of ladies run that bookshop. And they've been posting on Facebook, and it's been really cheering to see them, sort of their faces and smile. They've been doing a very personal service touch, which is, I think, this is, in a funny kind of way, these are the arguments we've always been putting forward, aren't they, to support independent bookshops. And this is the reason why, because they go above and beyond, because of the human touch, because they're so passionate about what they're doing. And it is nice to see the customers supporting that as well, to see readers actually going out of their way to support those bookshops. So long may it last.
And I was having a chat with somebody who works for my publishers, and they said supermarket books have been doing very well, and it might be to do with the toilet paper shortage.
It could be, couldn't it? Yeah. I feel quite smug now that my book is in the supermarket. No, I don't. I don't feel smug at all.
You say that about small independent bookshops. I live in a Hassocks, which Andrew Harrison is saying all the murderers are artisan and self-curating, so that's interesting.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I live in Hassocks, which is like a big village, small town, and I haven't been going to Tesco's or Sainsbury's. I don't think it's worth it. But the local shops are actually saying that trade is quite vibrant in not just the supermarkets, but the butchers, the coffee shops, even the coffee shop. But I don't know whether people are sort of just because they have to socially distance or self-isolate, or just because they're very precious about their local shops and local communities. They're actually focusing back on the smaller, more vulnerable businesses than some of the big multinationals.
I've noticed a lot of, so locally to us, farm shops and places like that have been running special services in support of, vulnerable and elderly people in the community. So I think there's a definite sense of that. And I noticed Andy had made a comment about, we've been talking about the police and military planning for worst case scenarios in terms of human behaviour, some of which we have seen, and obviously it's made the headlines a lot. But Andy's got a little comment there, small stories of good deeds and caring, and he's absolutely right. There are those stories, and I think if we can amplify some of those stories and some of those voices, maybe ultimately after all of this, we'll come to a point where we realise that what it actually really means to be human and social and in good health, in inverted commas, because we've been through something this devastating and this frightening and this completely unexpected and unknown. And it's, this is the reason why, terrible analogy, but this is the reason why I love watching zombie apocalypse films, because not because of the zombies, obviously they have an interest of their own, but no, it's to do with those pockets of humanity and the way in which, and the things we come to cherish when we're absolutely, sort of in extremis, and the things we try and get back in touch with. I don't know about you guys, but I'm absolutely desperate to see my mum this weekend. It's Mother's Day. It's never felt like a more important Mother's Day. There's those kinds of things. I think you get, there's a certain emotional minutia there, which I think Andy is right. Those stories mustn't be forgotten, and they must. Hopefully, there'll be many more of them, and people will start to realise. I've noticed certainly my timeline on Twitter has seemed to become much more positive. A lot of people are going out of their way to post positive stuff, and I think that's really important.
It can always sound a bit trite, especially from authors' point of views, because we're, but. Yeah, I think it does make you evaluate what actually is important, and part of it, again, the egotism of authors, but part of it does appear to be reading, which is a relief.
Yes, that's nice. Yep.
I think we should probably think about wrapping up. We're coming up to the half-hour mark.
I'd just like to, I don't know whether Sven's got a moment to put something about what it's like in Germany.
Yes, actually, good point.
Yeah. Still there.
Is Sven still with us? If we
a while ago.
Away. Hello, Sven.
That was a little while ago he posted that. I've got the chance I can actually show people's messages on screen. It's gone very quiet. I'm not quite sure whether I haven't been. I've been looking at us not through Facebook, through the actual.
I'm looking through Stream Title, and I can see the comments, but the last one I can see, the last message was Andy's one.
Yeah. I think there's millions more. We haven't put them all off.
But,
I'd be really interested to find out how different countries are going about it. Maybe more international and speak some foreign writers.
That would be really good, I think, definitely.
Has any suggestions?
Yeah,
really good. So just quickly, Sarah, you're working on an untitled book now, aren't you?
Well, I am so hopefully there'll be sort of an announcement about what's coming next from me imminently. It's obviously it's not the best time in the world to be announcing stuff like this, but hopefully there'll be something coming soon. And so that is, largely wrapped up the next thing from me, which will be out next year. So what I'm really doing is I'm working on the thing after that.
Wow. So that's really quite exciting. There's something going on.
It is good too. And I'm resting the Marnie Rome series for a while. I'm not saying never again to it, but the next thing from me will be a standalone, and the thing after that will almost certainly be another standalone as well. Okay. So yeah, it's exciting. It's slightly terrifying, but also exciting.
And Graham, have you got another non-fiction one as well on that?
No, I've got this, but I'm really focusing this year on the fiction. Hopefully, anything that comes out of that, but also the advisory service. I'm really my website's about to be relaunched, and I've got a team of experts now aligned to me. So, including Kate.
If you are a writer, Graham is brilliant at helping you sort stories through, because Graham understands stories, which not a lot of experts necessarily do. Do you know what I mean? So not only can Graham help you with getting it right, but very often he suggests the scenario in which a story can happen that will get it right, which is handy. Anyway.
Always away. The procedure's always fluid. I used to get in trouble for that when I was in the police, making the procedure fluid, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Well, it needs to be now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
My day job boss said to me something quite good. I think it ought to be the new version of keep calm and carry on, because obviously we can't do that. It was muddling through is the new normal.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I thought, yes, happy muddling, everybody.
Yeah.
On that very good note, very happy. Listen, thank you. Tomorrow I'm going to hopefully be speaking to Vaseem Khan and to Linden Books in Lincoln.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to try and keep this up for a few days until it sort of wears thin. But thank you very much for being very, very proper guests and
Thank you.
in our various writing rooms and living rooms.
Fantastic. Take care, guys. Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.